Today we're talking about going over the line.
Ooh.
So with that in mind, is there a line you wish you didn't cross in your life, or maybe a line that you refuse to budge on?
We'd be here all day. I am a man filled with regrets.
Yeah. A line I won't budge on, toilet paper. You know,
Like ply?
I'm very curious about where this is.
Yeah. I'm like,
Say more.
Yeah, you gotta be 2-ply. I take toilet paper on trips. When we go to Vegas, you don't want to have a Vegas night and then go home and not treat yourself right. There's certain lines I won't budge on.
The more I learn about you, just the more I want to learn. I just want to keep going. And
we just keep getting to know each other.
The wheels will come off. It's like going around a corner at 100 miles an hour. You can't do that. You have to slow down. In a sport that's quite lonely, being on the road for those extra days, you're on a constant treadmill where it's like one big event after one big event after another one.
Guys, welcome back to The Athletic Show. How's it going?
Doing great.
Let's do it.
Hey, if I was any better, it'd be illegal.
That's right, Jason. A lot happened this week, okay? And we're going to break it all down. First, we're going to go inside the NFL trade deadline. And then we're going to talk about the record-setting New York City Marathon that just happened. And we're going to feature an exclusive interview with tennis star Jack Draper surrounding a big controversy in his sport. So let's tap in. So our first story today is coming from the NFL. The Athletic's Nikki Javala and Dan Wiederer had some great reporting about what goes on behind the NFL trade deadline. And Dan Wiederer, you're here to talk to us about it. So welcome.
Thank you. Busy times in the NFL.
Yeah, busy times.
1 week.
Yeah,
exactly. And before we get into the story, you know, Tuesday was the NFL deadline, which is the last day that teams can change players, right? So Robert, break it down for us. What was the most surprising move?
It was kind of a quiet start to the day. You know, there weren't a lot of big name trades. And then you had that moment on social media where is this real? And that was the Sauce Gardner to the Colts trade. So Sauce Gardner, all-pro cornerback for the New York Jets, one of the bigger stars in the NFL, young player, gets traded for 2 first-round picks to the Indianapolis
That's
Colts.
the part that sounded crazy.
It's a huge price. In the NFL world, this is a seismic sort of move.
Ooh, okay, so why did the Colts do that?
They feel like their time is now. This is a declaration of, we think we can do this. We think in a crowded league where no one's really separated themselves, we have a chance to pull this off. And that's just not a place we expect it to be with the Indianapolis Colts.
No question. It's a surprising team and a surprising move that puts them in a position to be very relevant through the end of the season.
So what's interesting about this is, like, yes, we could talk about how this sets teams up for success, but there's also this aspect of what does it set up a player to experience in the midst of a trade? Dan, this is what you and Nikki worked on in your reporting.
Yeah, I think some of our attempts were to illuminate the human element of this, and I kind of boil it down to 3 levels. First, you have the shock or surprise of the player who gets moved. Then you sort of have this balance of the disappointment of being discarded with the excitement of somebody wanting you and trying to figure out how you calibrate that, and that's different for every single guy. And then there's just the general life logistics. Where am I going? How am I getting there? When I get there, where are my clothes? Where's my car? All these things that come into this whirlwind that these guys have to experience.
And there was more trades than we've been seeing in the last few years. What did you find from that perspective?
Well, look, teams are getting more aggressive. General managers are getting younger. Robert, I'm sure you've got some perspective on why the volume of these trades have sort of exploded here in recent years, but it has been notable that there's been so many more of these headline-grabbing moves.
I think there's a lot of different factors at play. And so if you want difference-making players and long-term difference-making players, Sauce Gardner isn't just a now move. It is a next 3 or 4 years move for the Colts.
The logistics part of it, though, you know, and the personal and human side of it, the finding out of it, and also like the shipping your cars or finding an apartment. There's a lot. Moving your family. How do players have to kind of navigate not only those waters, but also get a new playbook and learn about their new surroundings.
And it really is a whirlwind. And oftentimes you're going to hear from your general manager that's trading you first, and then oftentimes the general manager who's acquiring you will get to you next. And you're just on these calls quickly trying to figure out what's next for me. And as you mentioned, you've got to go into a new building. You've got to figure out where you're going first. You got to figure out who's your coach, who's your position coach, who's your coordinator. And now you've got to get used to an entire locker room of guys you don't know. These in-season trades are harder than any of the off-season trades because there's no runway. And you've got to really hit the ground running. And it is a challenge for these guys. Now you've got to go and refocus very quickly with a new team that wants you to win them a Super Bowl.
It really is a reminder of how much this is a job. Sometimes I think we lose sight of that. Like
It's a job and it's a business.
It is,
right?
And I think removing sort of the emotional aspects of that, there are layers to doing it, but this is one of those situations where it becomes stark. This is what I do for a living. I get paid to do this.
I think the business part, I think, is going to be more accentuated because of the current generation of kids who are in the college programs. Like, we used to see maybe a guy transfer to one school and then make his trek to the NFL. Now, all the things that are happening before you're professionalized, it's like, all right, I've been to 3 different schools over the last 3 years. Now I got to go to Miami. Now I got to go to Philadelphia. Like you mentioned, it's a job and it's a part of the ecosphere.
The one difference between college and the pros is when you get deeper along in your professional career, you've got a family. And now there's things that have to deal with that. I spoke with Kevin Byard in the Bears locker room just last week about this very topic. A couple years ago, he's an all-pro in Tennessee, and he gets moved in the middle of the season to the Philadelphia Eagles 2 weeks after his wife gave birth to their son. There was complications with the pregnancy. His son was in the hospital for 5 months, and now he's got to uproot, go, and try to help the Philadelphia Eagles try to be Super Bowl contenders while dealing with all this stuff in his personal life back in Tennessee. That's not an easy balance to strike, and I think it was one of those times. Kevin Byard's coming up on the end of his 10th year. He's never missed a football game. He said during that period of his life, he was like, man, I might need a break for a little while. He didn't take it, obviously persevered through it. That's what they pay you for in the NFL.
Yeah.
Kevin's story was one that touched me, particularly because of him wanting to be home with his wife and the aspect of, sure, you could be shocked that you got traded, that you didn't do enough, you didn't perform enough to not be on the chopping block, or you perform well enough that someone else wants you to be able to join. There's also this aspect of like, what did I get traded for? Right. The devaluation of your talent, right? But it just also seems like there's so many aspects that go into the emotional level, the personal level of how does this not only impact me, but also my family.
No question. And that's where you have this profound appreciation for how mentally tough a lot of these guys are, to be able to juggle those things and not show the outside world how much they're dealing with, because that's what you're paid to do.
Similar situation, obviously not on the football level, but my son was in the NICU for 5 weeks and I did not miss any of my radio shows because somebody's wanting to take your spot in the city where everybody wants it. The professional leagues that, NBA, Major League Baseball, and of course the NFL, there's somebody that's waiting to take your spot. So it's a weird dynamic that you have to negotiate, but you got to pay the bills.
I'll give you the poster child of a guy who's moved to a lot of places during his NFL career, Josh McCown. 19 seasons, went to 12 different teams. He said at one point in their life, he and his wife, Natalie, had celebrated Christmas in 9 years in different houses. 4 kids born in 3 different states. And so in 2008, he gets signed to a contract with the Miami Dolphins to become their starter. Before the end of training camp, they signed Chad Pennington and then trade Josh to Carolina right after he bought a house. So good luck dealing with all that.
So the question all kind of boils down to, is this the right way to go about this? Robert, you mentioned that, you're pushing the deadline back to be able to help teams assess if we're in or not. But is there a rule that we should put in place that the GM has to call you, has to give you a heads up? You're not finding out as you're walking out the locker room.
This is just part of the sports world. I think that there are some, I think so too often, I think we try to ascribe normal workplace conditions to what it is like to work in professional sports. There are some elements of this where it's just kind of how it goes.
This is a cutthroat, multi-billion-dollar industry, and there's an urgency to it. So if I trade for you on Tuesday, I want you at practice on Wednesday, and I want you on the field for game day on Sunday. It's just what it is.
That's the point.
That's real. Thank you, Dan, for this
welcome. Glad to be
reporting
here.
and for
Appreciate you,
joining
brother.
us. This was great. Getting into our second story of this week, we're talking about the NYC Marathon. Kenyan runner Helen Obiri just won the women's race, setting a new course record. First and foremost, have any of you run a marathon before?
Come on.
Not the audible laugh.
Yeah, come on, let's
Not
be.
the audible laugh.
I run because I have to.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's not a
okay.
choice for me.
If you're being chased.
Yes.
Yeah. There's not for me, as y'all can see. Like, it's not my bag. Like, my nipples bleeding at 9 a.m. isn't really something that I want to aspire to be.
Okay, so as a trio, I don't think we're all runners here, but it is a part of a new pattern, Helen Obiri's race record. There's a new pattern being set here of world records being broken in the last few years, and it's coinciding with the release of these new high-tech super shoes. So it's asking this question and it's raising this question, are these athletes actually getting faster, or do they just have better shoes?
You have to break this down for me. What can a shoe actually do for you? How does a super shoe make you a better runner? It feels like they can only go so far.
Okay, I'm so happy you asked this question. So right now, which I didn't know before I read this article, But there is like this technological arms race happening between Nike, Adidas, Puma, On, Hoka, all these big running shoe companies, basically to create the best super shoe. And these shoes that they're creating are focused on helping you run more efficiently, help you run faster because you're running more efficiently, because you're not exerting as much energy. So Nike Vaporfly was the shoe that came out in around 2016, 2017. Nike claimed with data, they had a full scientific study done. Their shoe can help you conserve 4% more energy on each stride. When we're talking about 4%
Over
on
26
each stride,
miles?
thank you. That is the difference. Those are minutes, right? Whether you're trying to beat a world record or a personal record, that is significant impact on your ability to get through a race. I actually had the opportunity to try out the Nike Vaporfly
Look at that.
and the new On shoes that Helen Obiri was wearing when she won the women's race at the New York City Marathon and when she set that world record. So I got them and I brought them because you guys have to feel them to understand just how light they are and also
Light as air.
how they feel like material.
The thickness of the sole is crazy.
Yes, compared to the thinness of the actual top.
Yeah.
Now, you're feeling those, and you've probably had some Nikes before, but this right here,
This is
this
what I'm
feels
excited
like,
about.
you know what? I'll let you feel.
It truly is like some
Try to
sci-fi
open
stuff.
the shoe.
It's
Try
like
to
some
open-
sci-fi stuff.
Like, it's tough to open. These are the generic retail versions,
These aren't
right?
the custom joints.
These are
right?
the custom.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
imagine what the custom that Helen Obiri has formulated to her foot.
I would feel like
on, man.
I feel like I would do a disservice to running and how dope these are if I put these on. You know what I mean?
This actually came about because a designer at On watched a video of a guy decorating their Halloween decoration, a pumpkin with a glue gun. And he was fascinated by the idea of basically creating new texture over a hard surface or a different complicated surface. And he's like, we should try that. And they made this prototype. They use it with a robotic arm.
They literally spray it on. When you watch the video of it,
Yeah.
there's a robot spraying on.
Correct.
the
And it's
material
a
of the shoe.
one-arm robot, exactly. And so Helen Obiri has these shoes, and I don't know if you just saw it. It was actually not easy to put these shoes on. Like, you've got to put some manual labor just to put your foot in it. But once they're in, I thought I needed laces. No, I did not. Now, I want you to watch this. You'll see that the back of my foot doesn't really
Yeah.
come down.
How soft was it?
Oh, it was clouds. Clouds. Like, immediately as soon as I put my foot in there. I'm not saying this as like an ad for these shoes, okay? It's all about this foam layer on top of a carbon plate that's being added to all of these quote unquote super shoes. This is the Nike Vaporfly. It's all about changing the way that you strike and also being able to bounce off the ground.
So from the technological standpoint, we've seen this across sports with helmets in the NFL making you faster and obviously helping the impact zones. And we've seen it with the torpedo bats, that revolution that happened over the last couple of years in the Major League Baseball. How do you stay ahead of the tech? What's the next step if the shoe, because in this sport, you don't have a bunch of equipment, it's you and the shoe. So what will be the next step to kind of take this further in not only competitive balance, because I feel like that's what this is.
Yeah.
That's really what
Competitive balance,
I'm
right?
fascinated by where the lines are in this because they have drawn some. There was a Nike shoe, the Alpha Fly, that they released and eventually became outlawed because it was going too far. And so there was a certain set of circumstances put into place where the carbon plate, there could only be one of them. They could only be
It could be
timed
too
a certain
high,
way.
yep.
Foam could only be a
Like
certain
NASCAR rules.
So I'm just wondering like how they're figuring out where these lines are.
Yeah.
Like why is that shoe not okay, but these shoes are okay? And so there's some ambiguity around that. To me, the most compelling part of this is that we see all of these technological innovations driving success in other sports. Like motor racing is a perfect example. These are teams putting millions and millions of dollars into these cars. And that they're trying to prevent that by putting certain rules into place with this, where the shoes have to be available at market in retail for 4 months before you can use them. And so I do think that puts a little bit of a barrier on it. And so I'm just really interested in how they're trying to control this and where the lines are being drawn. It seems like they're trying to find the right points for that.
And I think it's because it's still so new, right? But I love the fact that all of these big footwear companies are investing in it because it's going to force folks to have to answer this, right? We saw this with the polyurethane swimsuits with Speedo, right? The laser Speedo, they had to ban them because of that. Like, it wouldn't have happened had it not been on a large scale at the 2008, 2009 Olympics, I believe it was. But like this, for me, of course, the technological innovation causing folks to be able to run faster, break world records, like, sure, that's a little bit interesting. It's a little bit prickly for folks. But I think now I'm looking at this story, now that I ran in them, I'm looking at this and I'm more thinking about how this changes for the identity of the marathoner, right? Like, if I got those shoes on and somebody sees me with those, like, I'm running around my neighborhood, they're like, oh, she's serious about what she's doing. Like, you know what I mean?
It's a status symbol as well.
Right, it's a status symbol, right? Like, I think back to when I used to buy basketball shoes out of East Bay magazine.
Yep.
And there were certain pages that was like, okay, those are the generics.
Yeah, those are the bubbles.
Right, those are
Favorite day of the year
right?
is
But
going
you're
through the
saying-
East Bay.
Right, but then there was also ads for certain shoes that was like, oh, you're a real baller.
Yeah.
Oh, I see that you take this serious.
It's like when the Hyperdunks came out.
Exactly. And so I feel like that's what these companies, of course, they want their runners to win races, et cetera. But now it's really about how can we influence how people are looking at these, becoming marathoners and becoming runners and get into the cultural zeitgeist of the style and the cultural identity of being a runner.
But it also creates a mad grab to find these at market. Like, it does create a great bidding war, and I think just huge upside for a lot of these companies trying to sell these shoes.
When this story first came out, Liam Tharm has been covering this for The Athletic. I was like, this is interesting. I don't know what this is going to look like in terms of what these shoes could do. But now I'm like, that I've worn them and I see the difference. And I'm like, am I a runner? I'm obsessed. Well, that was our second story. We've now all seen my legs move athletically.
The form was great, honestly.
Thank you. We're going to move on now. Our main story is about a controversy that is in professional tennis. Is the sport's grueling schedule harming players? So Jack Draper, the current number 11 player in the world, spoke about the issue in an interview that aired yesterday, and he's recovering from an arm injury that caused him to withdraw from the US Open and has sidelined him for the rest of the 2025 season. So let's see what he had to say.
The schedule and the structure of the sport has been a hot topic of conversation in tennis recently. Where do you stand on all of it?
It's something I feel really passionate about, the fact that there's so much conversation in tennis right now and it needs maybe someone to just speak up, talk out about it.
What's the biggest problem that you see out there right now?
Just the player welfare, just the mental burnout that especially certain things in the calendar are causing. You're seeing a lot of players come out, talk about mental health, talk about, kind of that feel nothing factor. And I think a big part of it is just because tennis players are just on the road so much now, and the governing bodies are just adding more days, more requirements to the players. It's really difficult for a player to manage, especially in a sport that's quite lonely, being on the road for those extra days and not having the time to come back in between, and just feeling like you're on a constant treadmill where it's like one big event after one big event after another one. Obviously, we're in such a privileged position. I completely understand that. We're making great money. We're in a really good spot playing the sport we love. But can the sport be better? Yes, it can. And I think it's now up to the players to stop talking about it all the time and actually take some action, come forward, speak about it, speak to the heads of the ATP, speak to the organisations, and really come to some solutions here, I suppose.
Do you worry that it might take something shocking, like a top player walking away with burnout or something like that, or a horrible injury, for people to really wake up and act?
I hope that it doesn't get to that. I hope it doesn't get to the point where shocking things have to happen for them to see and to come together and to really sort it out. And I suppose that's what the players have been trying to do, and that's, I may not make any difference at all, but that's my intention, is to try and speak out about it, try and get the players coming together to really push for changes so stuff like that doesn't happen. Because the wheels will come off. It's like going around a corner at 100 miles an hour. You can't do that. You have to slow down.
To help us break it down, we actually have David Law, the host of the tennis podcast, where Jack Draper made these comments, joining us. Welcome to the show, David.
Hi, nice to be with you.
We got to understand Jack's concerns. Like, how much more is being asked of these tennis players?
Effectively, it's about an extra 5 to 6 weeks a year on the road. Events that used to be 7 days long, the sort of events just below the Grand Slam tournaments, which are all 2 weeks long. There was a run of 9 tournaments that most of them were a week long. And now they've been extended to 12 days each. And so effectively they're playing the same number of matches, but they're just always in the same place, always on location. They don't really get downtime at all. And we are seeing players talking about their mental health suffering, that they don't feel like they have another life. They're feeling burnt out. But they're doing it sporadically. I mean, in this case, Jack Draper actually came to us and messaged us on Tennis Podcast Instagram because he wanted to appear on the show to talk about this subject. He felt so strongly about it. I've never had that before in 30 years of working in tennis, a player approach us like that. And that's how strongly he feels about it. He's worried. And you know, he's a young guy of 23. He wants a long career, and I think he's concerned that he might not end up getting one.
Wow, taking the initiative. I mean, it's one thing to be able to speak out about it, but what does he actually want to see done to help this?
Well, I think first and foremost, he would like the players to be able to have a proper open dialogue with the ATP Tour leadership and ask them to reduce it down. Okay, maybe not to 7 days as it used to be, but to 9 days so that tournaments are a week long, including a second weekend, which would help the tournaments sell extra tickets, yes. He's said, I'm prepared to take less money, which is unusual in professional sports, but in order to have a sort of better quality of life, and also maybe make the sport a little more scarce so that people miss it, is how he termed it. That's what he's hoping for. The issue you have is that the ATP that runs the professional tennis tour, they are 50% owned by players and tournaments. So there is a conflict of interest there. They're trying to give players more money. They're doing it by lengthening tournaments in order to create more revenue that way. But as Jack's saying, that just isn't working for us. He says that no player that he's spoken to likes these changes. They all hate it, he said.
Is there any movement toward any sort of unionization or any sort of body that could collectively bargain on behalf of the players? Because obviously in team sports, especially in the US, these are things that are agreed upon from two different entities. And the fact that it's the same one leads to all of these complications. Is there any sort of movement or momentum behind that sort of idea to kind of have a collective power that these players can bring to these discussions?
There is a movement. I mean, there has always been an ATP player council, but you still have that conflict. You don't have that standalone player union that you're talking about there. But there has been efforts to create what is known as the Professional Tennis Players Association. That was driven by Novak Djokovic. And that organisation has actually got a lawsuit currently against the Grand Slam tournaments and the ATP to try to get a whole raft of different conditions improved. But it's all very fragmented. There are some players that believe in that new entity. There are some that don't. There's also a top 10 player coalition that have sent letters to Grand Slams asking for a greater share of the prize money that Wimbledon and the US Open and the rest make. But it's all very fragmented. It's effectively 3 organisations all sort of trying to represent the players. And certainly Jack doesn't think that that's getting the job done.
I commend Jack for having the amount of vulnerability, not only to DM you guys and message you and say, hey, I want to talk about this, but then opening up on the show about this. And November is Men's Mental Health Month. We don't talk about it a lot, but especially with these athletes, are there any resources that are currently in place where there's people to talk to until there's a permanent solution figured out?
Yeah, it's a great question, and they have invested in that. They do have tour managers, they do have people to go to. Jack's spoken about that. He was very keen not to be seen to be just complaining or bashing the tour. You know, he's got a lot of time for a lot of things they've done. But I think just structurally, his view is that I think that would be just putting sticking plasters on the problem. I think he believes that until structural changes are made and you actually just reduce the workload, you're never going to fully solve this.
David, structural change, reducing the workload, sounds like less money to be made. Sounds like less opportunity for fans to consume. How much money is on the line here if these tennis bodies are basically acquiescing to what the players and the athletes want?
Well, it is millions of dollars. They have created more revenue by lengthening these tournaments, but Jack thinks that's backfired. The truth is he's saying that players are having to miss tournaments because of their mental health, because of their physical health. They need a break, and therefore they then get punished at the end of the year with these bonus pools reducing, so they end up with less money anyway. So it is a huge financial issue for them. I mean, look, I'm not going to get the violins out. They make plenty of money, but the fact is there is a lot at stake there, and unusually he's prepared to say, I'd take less money for a better schedule.
How do you see this playing out, David?
Yeah.
It's not going to be overnight. They've committed to this, have the ATP Tour. The idea is for it to be a 30-year agreement. That having been said, Jack feels pretty confident that if enough players speak out, that they would have to do something about it. So he's trying to set the ball rolling. I don't think this subject is going to go away and players are going to go quietly, because I think they're pretty unified. If they actually all were spoken to, I think they'd all agree. So I don't think it's done yet.
30-year deal.
30 years is
Wow.
crazy.
Appreciate the knowledge on
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David, for breaking this down. By the way, where can we get the rest of this interview? Where can we see that?
Yeah, Jack spent 2 hours with us. He was fantastic, and you can listen to the whole interview wherever you get your podcasts just by searching for the Tennis Podcast, and it's also available on the Tennis Podcast YouTube channel.
Well, thank you, David. Appreciate it.
David.
30 years.
30 years.
That
Great.
feels inhumane. And it also feels like it's going to be impossible for them to change that until they get a union.
That you feel the power dynamics involved with a 30-year deal. There's no group that has any sort of leverage that would agree to a 30-year deal.
Yeah, and if you do, you have to have someone at the very top say, "I'm just not going to do it this week,"
Right.
and set the standard. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
I just think about what's happening in my world and the NFL and the league I cover every single day, and this push to now have an 18th game as part of all of this. And the players union, I understand where they're coming from in this. When it went to 17 games, they got an extra % of revenue. That's a ton of money. They got more money for player pensions. They got extra roster sizes, so now there are more jobs available. So there's always going to be a little give and take, and I can understand why the unions have to agree to this. My question at the end of all of this is, how much is enough? I feel like we're going to figure out how close to the sun are these leagues.
Sure.
Because I think that they are pushing the limits and the barriers that they should be a little bit more weary of when it comes to this stuff.
And I think we're going to find out just how much power a star-driven league like tennis has. Like, how much power do these players have?
Individuals.
Jack Draper talking about getting together with these other tennis stars and being able to say something. I'm rooting for them. We'll see what happens, but I'm rooting for them.
All right, y'all, we're back with another edition of LFG. That's right, learning feels good. You got your paddles. Everybody's got their paddle. All right, I'm going to give you a stat, and you're going to try to guess what story it relates to. If everyone's ready, say ready.
Ready.
So he's always doing the runs. She's amazing. She's amazing. Our resident diva. All right, the clue is 200,000. That's right, not 200,000, 200,000. All right, is that A, the amount of money Tom Brady spent to have his dog cloned? We can talk about that some other time. B, average number of TikTok views Alabama's Tri-Delta sorority got for videos showing off their game day outfits.
I believe that.
C, number of tickets sold to the World Cup in the first hour they were on sale. Or D, the opening bid for one of Shohei Ohtani's home run balls from the National League Championship Series. I'll give you a chance here. A, B, C, or D. The clue is 200,000. Robert's going.
It's so funny. That's the only one that I'm like, I feel like it's way more money to clone it all.
Because I think it's so crazy that they're incentivized to have us talking about it right now. That's my context clue reason for
Ooh, there's a little payola going on. All right, what about you? Come on, Tom Brady. We're going Tri-Delta sorority.
I just feel like $200,000 is not enough.
Study long, study wrong. Come on, let's go. Oh, look at that. The late entry, the opening bid for one of Shohei Ohtani's home run balls. Ladies and gentlemen, Dodgers fan Carlos Mendoza, shout out to Carlos, secured the second of 3 home run balls Shohei hit in the greatest single game performance in Major League Baseball history. 3 home runs, 10 strikeouts. Larry Holder had a fun story in The Athletic this week about how the auction house working with Mendoza had a very thorough process to verify the authenticity of the ball, like having the fan write a notarized affidavit and undergo a polygraph.
That doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah. Gave a little blood, had to give a kidney, all those things.
First one.
Yeah. It's expected to go for $1 to $2 million.
I knew it couldn't be A.
All right, so what's the most
How much did
expensive?
he pay the Coolest though?
Well, I don't know. But
Everything I
it's some
learn about Tom
Illuminati
Brady
lotion
makes
kind
him
of vibe.
weirder. Every single thing we learn about him makes him a stranger
A
person.
lot of things that I learned about Tom Brady are against.
All of them are against my will.
I did not ask.
All right, so what's the most expensive or precious piece of sports memorabilia you guys own?
Does my 2018 Warriors championship ring count?
All right, listen, Jesus. That's enough. All right.
End the show.
Fair.
All right.
Okay. Well, that's gonna be it for
Championship ring. How you doing?
Flexing. Okay. Sorry, you guys. Remember, you can find new episodes of The Athletic Show every Saturday on Fire TV, and head on over to theathletic.com for these stories that we covered today and way more, because we got the best newsroom.
We're talking about T-shirts and helmets. She gonna bring up a championship ring.
I mean, I don't.
What kind of is that? What kind of is that?